Welcome to Diplomacy Today, a podcast series by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In this podcast series, we invite diplomats, opinion makers, government officials, and academia, and discuss with them developments around the globe, Pakistan's foreign policy, and the important role that Pakistani diplomats play around the world. I'm your host, Aizaz Ahmad Chaudhry, spokesperson, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And today it is my great honor to have with us a special guest who several years after his retirement continues to impress us with his intellect and his keen insight into global and regional developments. The 28th Foreign Secretary of Pakistan, Ambassador Aizaz Ahmad Chaudhry. Ambassador Aizaz, welcome to Diplomacy Today.
Thank you for having me.
Ambassador Chaudhry, you were Pakistan's 28th Foreign Secretary. You were, before becoming the Foreign Secretary, the Ambassador of Pakistan to the Netherlands. You also served as Pakistan's Ambassador to Washington, D.C. And you were also the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You have great contributions to this service, to Pakistan's diplomacy, and we thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Since your retirement, you have been involved in think tanks, and you were Director General of the Institute of Strategic Studies for some years. Thereafter, you have opened your own think tank, the Snowball Institute. So I would like to discuss with you some of the work that Snowball Institute has been undertaking. And this includes a policy brief that I understand was developed after a conclave that was held earlier this year. Can you share with us what were the policy recommendations that came out of that conclave, and how do you think Pakistan should move or orient its foreign policy?
Yeah, we'll be happy to. This is a private sector think tank, and we brought together another think tank as well as an academic institution to formulate concrete recommendations for national security and foreign policy of Pakistan. In the foreign policy realm, there were three key recommendations that we made. One was that our foreign policy must work for friendship for peace, and we should not be fighting others' wars. And I think that's very important given what has happened in the last 2 decades. Secondly, neighborhood first is important, like most of the nations try to build a stronger relationship with the neighbors of the country. And third is that every key foreign policy issue must be debated extensively, preferably in the parliament of the country. In the national security realm, we were of the view that Pakistan should have a national security council as well as a national security advisor. We believe that the national security paradigm needs a strategic review of the kind that was done in January 2022. A national security policy was announced, and I think this should be a constant and consistent process. Of course, there were several other recommendations. I do not have the time to go through all of them, but it's an exercise that was meant to provide some guidance for the public policy makers of the country.
You mentioned a recommendation regarding the establishment of the Security Council, National Security Council, and the appointment of a National Security Advisor. This has been a fairly controversial idea in our history. Why do you think your recommendation would be different from what was proposed in the past?
You see, the kind of challenges that Pakistan faces with its national security, foreign policy, as well as domestic governance, we require a forum where the civil and military leadership comes together and adopts decisions with consensus and a whole of the nation approach. That, in my view, is best done in a body which is National Security Council, and it's not unique to Pakistan. I mean, all major countries, including United States, India, and others which have the kind of security policies, security challenges that we face, they do have a National Security Council. So I have been a proponent of this idea. I believe it strengthens the hands of the elected government. It does not take anything away from that, because it is chaired by the elected Prime Minister, and it would serve the longer term interests of Pakistan.
And what would be the role of Parliament in this configuration?
Well, Parliament represents the people of Pakistan, and in my view, every issue which has implications for the country should be debated in the Parliament. And the National Security Council can actually benefit from that debate, because Parliament only gives ideas and gives its views representing the people of Pakistan, but it's not a decision-making body. That's the job of the executive, the government. And since the National Security Council is chaired by the Prime Minister, as well as 4 key ministers sit in that, but the military leadership also comes in, and intelligence agencies also sit in. So you can imagine the quality of decisions that Pakistan would take. We have suffered from one-man decisions in the past, and I think that this is an answer to those kind of situations.
Moving on to global developments, you have a keen insight into the developments that are taking place around us and the implications for Pakistan. So can you share with us what are the major challenges that Pakistan is facing on the global stage, and how are the international developments going to influence Pakistan's foreign policy?
Well, we all know that the world today is in a state of disarray, and we are moving from a largely unipolar world to a multipolar world. We have also seen unilateralism rising at the expense of multilateralism. We have seen global norms being eroded. And at a time like that, the most defining feature of today's world is the major power competition that the US has with China as well as with Russia. Now, there are several theaters of contestation which have an impact on Pakistan's foreign policy, the foremost being the US-China competition. So Pakistan has a choice to engage with both countries in a manner that its national interests are best served. Easier said than done, but that's the challenge our policymakers have. Secondly, the war in Europe has also raised prices of commodities, energy prices, and that has also severe implications for the rest of the world as well as for Pakistan. And now the situation in the Middle East too. There are 2 aspects of that. The Middle East is, there is a war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, but there is also phenomenal transformations happening in the Gulf region, particularly in Saudi Arabia. So enormous opportunities are now being opened because countries like Saudi Arabia are diversifying their options and showing a very subtle shift of their investments towards Asia. So the world throws up challenges around us, but there are also opportunities. It depends on us how we avail of them.
You mentioned the US-China rivalry, and if we zoom in on the Asia-Pacific region, we see around us emergence of new blocs and groupings, and in these groupings like Quad and Indo-Pacific strategies, a special role is being assigned to India. How do you think these developments would impact Pakistan's security, and what should be our response?
When US decided to shift its pivot towards Asia, it picked India as a preferred partner and started bolstering India's military and economic prowess. That, of course, built up India's image, made itself a partner of the US in Indo-Pacific strategy, in Quad and several other schemes, but they were all intended to contain the further rise of China. Now, there are two kinds of implications for Pakistan. One, that India's attitude to become a kind of net security provider, a hegemon, a kind of policeman, so to speak, of the region is not acceptable to Pakistan. In fact, it's not acceptable to other countries of the region. And the second is that Pakistan cannot be part of any effort to contain China, because Pakistan has a deep and abiding relationship with China. So there are implications of the US-China competition, but I believe there are also options and solutions which Pakistan can avail. Yes, India is now a partner of choice, but times change because India, in the name of strategic autonomy, has been trying to show to the US that it can still maintain relations, substantive relations with Russia and even with China, which shows that for the US it's not a set-get game in the Indo-Pacific region.
Speaking of India-Pakistan relations, you held an important position in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that was as Director General of South Asia. You have also been involved in the track 2 between Pakistan and India, so you have a keen insight into the dynamics of Pakistan-India relations. So how do you see the future of this relationship?
Well, one thing must be said at the outset: the future must be that of peaceful coexistence between the two countries, of cooperative relationship between the two countries, because that will serve the larger interests of both countries. However, we have also seen that India, particularly in the recent past under the government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has chosen to cut off all links with Pakistan. In an attempt to isolate Pakistan, India in fact is itself becoming isolated in the region, and hope that it would realize soon that its own regional and global profile will be better served if it normalizes relations with all its neighbors, including Pakistan. It all depends now on India to take any initiative, because Pakistan has already extended and made several gestures of friendship and cooperation. We are waiting, I guess, for a reciprocity from India. India often says that cross-border terrorism is the issue. Well, Pakistan is ready to discuss that, because we feel that it is Pakistan which is now suffering from India-sponsored terrorism inside Pakistan. And we had 20 cases of assassinations inside Pakistan, just like Indian operatives did in Canada and US and perhaps also in Australia. So we hope that India would like to discuss this with Pakistan, the cross-border terrorism. We have no issues with that. But India must also then discuss the Kashmir dispute, because which is a core concern despite 75 years of brutal repression of the Kashmiri people. The message of the Kashmiris is that we don't want to live with you. I think that message must be heard. So the best answer to the present impasse in Pakistan-India relations is to restart some kind of dialogue. Pakistan has always been ready for that. The onus is now on India whether it wishes to do.
You were Pakistan's ambassador to the United States, so you know firsthand the cyclical nature of this relationship. How do you see the state of bilateral relations between Pakistan and the United States today, and how do you think the two countries can work to strengthen trust and confidence in this relationship?
I take a larger relationship. Remember when Pakistan was created and it had to stitch together an entire statecraft, because and in the midst of enormous difficulty, it was the US which came to our help. And the assistance that US provided to build up our military strength, to build up our economy, to build up our agriculture. I think that remains in the memory of our people. Ever since the two countries and the people of the two countries have remained connected. While the government-to-government relationship has oscillated, and you are right, between highs and lows, the people-to-people relationship has remained steady, in my view. And today, even the US is a prime destination for Pakistani students, for Pakistani physicians, for Pakistani IT experts, for Pakistani traders. Is the largest trading partner of Pakistan. So I believe that this relationship by and large serves Pakistan's interest, provided we handle it in a manner that is based on sovereign prerogatives of Pakistan and for mutual gain and respect.
You mentioned focus on the region as a priority for Pakistan's foreign policy. One of the challenges that Pakistan has been facing is in its relationship with Afghanistan. As a foreign secretary, you must have dealt with this issue as well. So what do you recommend should Pakistan be doing in order to have a steady, positive relationship with Afghanistan?
The successive governments and the people of Pakistan have always desired peace with our northwestern neighbor, which is Afghanistan. There are congruities, there are commonalities of history, culture, religion that remain a strength for Pakistan. However, we have also seen that Afghanistan has been a bastion of power competition, major power competition. And we've also seen that how after the exit of the United States in 2021, Afghanistan is now being ruled by a government which is Taliban's government, which is not ready to function as a normal state, particularly with regard to the commitments it had made of respecting girls and women to educate and work, and also creating a government which is more inclusive, but finally, most importantly, not allowing the Afghan soil to be used by terrorist entities. And the Afghan government of the day, unfortunately, has fallen short on all three commitments, particularly the last one, where we see that TTP is using Afghan soil to shed Pakistani blood, and this is absolutely not acceptable to the people of Pakistan. And I think the answer lies in persuading Taliban through multiple channels, not just government to government, but also through parliamentarians, civil society, religious leaders, etc., that it is in their own larger interests that peace prevails, so that Afghanistan becomes the kind of roundabout that Allama Iqbal had envisioned Afghanistan to be. It should benefit from being the hub that connects Central Asia and West Asia to South Asia. That's a message that has to go to them. Secondly, we must also start treating Afghanistan as an independent, sovereign country. We should make its own decisions. What kind of government it wants, what kind of system it wants to have, we should have nothing to do with that. But we should have peaceful borders, a border on which security should be not the prime condition, but the exchange of trade, transit trade, investments, that should be the top priority, so that the people of the area, particularly living on both sides of the border, get engaged in economic activities and reduce the space that is available to the militants at this time. So I think if we can somehow make economic interests as the primary focus of Pakistan-Afghanistan relations, I hope that security concerns will automatically be addressed.
Another question that I would like to ask you is the role of academia and think tanks in foreign policy making. You have mentioned the role of the Parliament and the National Security Council. what should be the relationship between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the academic world and the think tanks, so that their input is also taken on board when we are making big policy decisions?
You see, we've all been through university degrees programs, and you must have seen that there are countless, thousands of theses, MPhil theses, masters, PhD theses being written on issues of foreign policy and national security, and this is enormous resource that our policy makers must benefit. Now, academia often complains that whatever we write is of little use by to the policymakers, and hence the think tanks play the role of a bridge between academia and policymaking. So that's why it's important for the Foreign Ministry to take out time from its very busy schedule to hold brainstorming sessions with former practitioners, with academia, as well as civil society, to get a feel how the nation appraises the foreign policy choices that we have made, because that must provide a very useful input to the overall policy making and the leadership of Pakistan.
Now, speaking about our diplomats and the role of diplomacy, we spoke about the challenges that we face around the world. Do you think our diplomatic service is geared towards these new demands that we see around the world? We also know that you have been a big proponent of civil service reforms. So do you think there is need for reform of the Foreign Service of Pakistan to align itself with the requirements of today?
Absolutely. I have written about civil service reforms because I believe that since 1973, when the large civil service reforms were created, the world has moved on, and I think we need to reform. And we know that several committees, including most recently Sheikh Ishrat Hussain Committee, had recommended that there should be 4 categories, and the tax categories and police and administration are separate, but foreign service itself should be a separate category with its own examination, with its own cadre, because foreign service is a very specialized job, diplomacy is a very specialized job, and we should have a greater space to serve the people of Pakistan. Our diplomats have been outstanding. Even the adversaries of Pakistan have recognized the talent and the articulation of our diplomats, and I think we should trust them to defend our interests, but we should also enable them by granting that space, so that the best and the most suitable officers are selected for running our diplomacy.
Thank you, Ambassador Aizaz Chaudhry, the 28th Foreign Secretary of Pakistan, for coming to our podcast, The Diplomacy Today. This concludes our interview with you, and we thank you for your service and for coming and speaking to us.
Thank you, and God bless Pakistan. God bless you all.
Thank you. This concludes our program for today. A conversation with Ambassador Aizaz Chaudhry, who spoke to us about Pakistan's foreign policy, its challenges, the opportunities, the important role that Pakistani diplomats play around the world, and his own thinking with respect to Pakistan's foreign policy.